In an earlier episode of New Jersey Living, the podcast, we covered the topic of buyer beware as it pertains to buyer protections with the inspection contingency. This episode, for episode 10, we are going to dive into part two, which is the finance contingency. So I have two of one of my go-to people when it comes to transaction. One is Alana Miles of Miles Law. She's an attorney, and Pam Lee with Simplicity, right? So she's with Title, and they're going to be able to give some really important and critical insights on the finance contingency and the role of title in the purchase process. So stick around, because particularly if you are a first time buyer or just have not purchased a property in a long, long time, this is going to give you some important insights on the process of what you need to prepare for, what protects you in the process of purchasing a home. So stick around. We're about to dive in now. Welcome to New Jersey Living, the podcast, where we explore all things New Jersey real estate. I'm your host, Corey Jones, a real estate agent with Coldwell Banker and the team leader of the New Jersey Living Group. We're a team of experienced agents who specialize in residential sales in several counties ranging from Bergen County in northern New Jersey to Ocean County down the shore. On this podcast, we will talk to real estate experts, local business owners, community leaders, and town officials to get the inside scoop various towns in New Jersey. We'll discuss everything from the latest market trends to featured local attractions with dining, recreation, and entertainment. Whether you're a current resident, a prospective buyer, or just curious about New Jersey real estate, we have something for you. So sit back, relax, and join us for a conversation about all things New Jersey living. All right, so welcome to episode 10. As I said in my intro, we are privileged to have two of my go-to people. We have Alana Miles from Miles Law, and we have Pam Lee of Simplicity. So I'm just going to give them a quick opportunity to give a little intro and whatever background, little summary info that you like to include, ladies, before we dive into the meat of the topic today, which is the finance contingency. So I'm going to start with you, Alana.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here. I am Alana Miles, partner and founder of Miles Law. We started our firm Juneteenth, June 19th of 2020. Prior to that, I was at another law firm and I practiced residential and commercial real estate transactions.
Thank you. All right, Pam.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Corey, and good to see you, Alana. I'm Pam Lee from Simplicity Title. I've been in title for going on 6 years now in March. Before that, I was in real estate for 3 years, so I know all different aspects of the business, and my goal is to get you guys to the closing table seamlessly and without any hiccups.
Fantastic. And I can speak for both. They do the job extremely well. These are two individuals I work with significantly throughout my transactions from year to year, month to month, week to week. So we're going to dive into mortgage. Well, we say mortgage contingency, but by contract, or the language in the contract, I should say, is the either mortgage contingency or finance contingency. So for buyers, as I mentioned earlier, we already talked about the inspection contingency. Buyers are often very concerned when they are signing all these papers. It's a stressful process. How am I protected? How am I covered? We did took a deep dive into attorney review, but I'm going to start there just for those who haven't heard that episode. So I'm going to start with you, Alana, just with a little bit of an overview of what attorney review is as it pertains to New Jersey real estate. And I say that regionally as well, because South Jersey doesn't do that so much as North Jersey. But if you can give a little bit of an overview of what attorney review is and what you're looking to accomplish during that period.
Yes, thank you. Attorney review is a very crucial process, specifically in New Jersey, and that is the timeline to and the opportunity to solidify how we're going to govern ourselves in the transaction, right? So we're going to talk about in a moment the financing contingency, but there are a lot of specific contingencies that we would want to negotiate. Inspections, you talked about on your prior episode, financing contingencies, when we're going to close, if there are any particulars around what happens after closing, where the closing is going to be, what happens if we miss a timeline, where is the deposit, who holds the deposit. a lot of factors that are already in the traditional contract of sale, but some of it is not. Some of it is not solidified, right? And the attorney review process solidifies those terms. So in New Jersey, every traditional contract of sale says a buyer and a seller, they have an opportunity to review the contract with an attorney within a 3-day time period. So most attorneys, we will do what's called disapproving of the contract, and then we will send amendments that are favorable to our clients. We might strike out amendments that we see in the traditional contract of sale that may not help our client, and then we'll add in some more amendments that might not be in there if the contract is a little outdated. And yeah, that's a snippet of what attorney review is.
Absolutely. So once we are in attorney review, um, we are really still open for either side to back out as well. That's another component that we mentioned in that previous episode. Seller could say, hey, look, I have another offer. I really like that offer much better. I'm going to move a different direction. Or, hey, buyer, can you match it? Or a buyer may not like some terms or some aspects of the deal and choose to back out, and there's no consequence there. So there's still that period on both sides that they could still choose just to terminate and walk away.
Right. And it's also important to note that in New Jersey, your timelines won't start until you conclude attorney review. So it's really important, sometimes title companies, inspectors, et cetera, when we send them the documents, they ask first, is this under contract? Because they also understand that deals can fall through an attorney review and that, no one wants to really waste time.
And that's a great segue. So I'm going to jump over to Pam, because once we conclude attorney review, we are now under contract. All right. So we're under contract. Title at that point in time gets involved. We have some other pieces that are happening in the background as well, such as buyer inspection, which we already addressed that in a previous episode. And appraisal is going to be ordered at that time as well. So we'll jump back to Alana on that appraisal piece, but let's jump into Pam's involvement at this point. So we've just gone under contract. Pam, just give us an overview of what title's process is at that point in time.
Yeah. So once I get the go ahead from Alana or the real estate attorney, I will order the title searches. So now what we do in the title searches is we go to the county. Well, we don't, but our searchers do. We make sure that there are no liens or defects on title. My title examiner will then go through all of the reports, create a commitment, which is like a book report, and then let everyone know like what is outstanding, what needs to be cleared up. And then now that gets sent to everyone, the lender, both attorneys, and that's when everyone will start working on clearing any defects that might be on there. And then we go into settlement too. So that is the money aspect. So that's when my team is in touch with the lender to work out numbers, or maybe just directly with the attorney if it's a cash deal. And then from there, we bring it to the closing table. But I think now I'm jumping ahead because it does happen all simultaneously. And it's so many moving parts, but that's pretty much the title company's role in the transaction.
So for those people who have no idea what a defect or what concern that there may be that title is looking for, give us some scenarios where these are some problems that title is looking to catch during that process.
Yeah. So construction lien, right? So that would be when the seller has done work on the property, didn't pay the contractors, and then the contractors would then put a lien on the property to get their money back when the seller goes to sell their home. Another lien would be an IRS lien. So if the seller hasn't paid their taxes, that would be another defect on title.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that is in a similar vein as when we're talking Oprah reports, which we did not delve into a lot in that prior Buyer Beware episode. And Alana, I'm going to skip back to you on that one because that's something that attorneys and realtors are more involved in than title as it pertains to Oprah. So, Alana, if you can just give a little detail why it's important to have an Oprah and what we're looking for when an Oprah report. Well, first, what is an Oprah? Because people just know Oprah by Winfrey, right? So, what is Oprah and what are we looking for?
Yes, Oprah, not to be confused with Winfrey, is known as the Open Public Records Act, right? So every municipality has a requirement to share public records with whoever asks for them. So with the Open Public Records Act, we really want to know what defects are on the property that won't that won't necessarily affect title, but will affect the home, right? So whether there are any open permits, a lot of times we'll ask about tax assessments, whether there's been any recent assessments, when the last time the property was assessed. We will want to know about any sewer issues. The most common, though, I would say, are open permits, because we will know what to expect later down the line when the seller has to satisfy their obligations, and whether they pulled the necessary permits that they were supposed to pull for the work that was done anyway.
Important point, because there's times where we have a property has a finished basement looks lovely, has a bathroom down there, and just doing the Oprah, we find that there was never any permits, right? So the work was done and not permitted. It doesn't have to be a basement necessarily. I just give that as an example, but there are certain improvements done on a property that may not have been done uh, according to code, or even if it was done according to code, it wasn't permitted through the town where it was approved, right? So that's why it's a very significant piece in the process. All right, so going back to you, Pam, going back to the title piece, a lot of buyers who are first time process that they're involved in buying a home, or I even have a lot of international clients as well who they've purchased property in other countries but never here in the U.S. And the question becomes about payouts, who they pay at closing, are like concerned with who do I have to pay what when it comes to closing, and just give a little bit of an overview of what closing looks like and how title facilitates that process.
Yeah, I did actually want to get into what title insurance is really quickly.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Just 101, a couple sentences about it. So there is an owner's title policy, which protects you, the home buyer, right? And then there's the lender's policy, which covers the lender, right? Which is the mortgaged amount. A lot of times you'll see optional on the closing disclosure, and that's because the lender doesn't require it. But it's, Alana can say, like, she wouldn't close a transaction with letting the buyer not get title insurance.
And explain the importance, because some people hear it but they're not understanding clearly maybe
Right,
what
right.
title insurance protects you against.
It protects you against fraud, right? Anything. So, like, let's say there was a lien on the property that wasn't cleared, and it was just showing up. It wasn't showing up at the time that the searchers were there, but it came up later. It would be the homeowner would be able to file a claim with the title company to cover that. So, let's say someone wasn't removed properly from ownership prior, and this person, the home buyer, now didn't get title insurance. If they came to the property and said, I actually own 50% of this property, that would be covered in the title insurance, right?
Got it.
And as opposed to other title insurances, title insurance protects from the time that you purchase and before, okay, as opposed to home insurance or health insurance that would protect you from the time that you purchase the insurance moving forward. Yeah. So
Right.
That's just something to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I hope that's a little more clear for everyone.
Yes, because this is the first time, if you've never purchased a home, title insurance is something that you never would have really engaged in, right? Unless you worked in title yourself.
And sometimes buyers think that it's not. I tell clients that it's required, but sometimes you'll see on the closing disclosure where it says in parentheses optional. And I tell my clients why it's really not optional. And unfortunately, sometimes they have to utilize their insurance policy, but we always explain that it's a one-time fee, and it gives you a protection that you really wish you would have in the event that something tragic happens. And I've experienced that as well, where clients are grateful they have their insurance policy, because prior lenders now want their home because foreclosure matters were in a way,
Yes.
stuff like that. So just
And
wanted to.
you never know if you could be that rare case, right?
Exactly.
Never know. And as Lana mentioned, it's one time. So it's not a add on to your monthly mortgage,
Mhm.
nothing that you're paying out of pocket again, annually or quarterly or anything like that. So definitely well worth it. So Pam, coming back to you again.
Yeah. Coming back
Um,
to the initial
yes.
question.
Yes.
So what does the closing process look like?
Yeah.
So by the time that you get to the closing table, your attorney or the title company, someone would have communicated what to bring as far as your cash to close. Sometimes, honestly, that happens at the last minute, like hours before closing, and that's something just that's something to just set your expectations for, because there are so many moving parts that like numbers change by the day. The closing date is typically a moving target. So there are just a lot of things up in the air that would change these numbers. So just coming with a personal checkbook is important too. So let's say, you have a number, then something changes last minute, and now you owe a couple hundred, up to 2,000 is when we would take a personal check. And then, or there are other times when you get money back. So it's like, these numbers change. And then,
Right.
so at the closing table, the notary, would be going through the documents with you. The attorney is there to help, clarify any legal questions that you might have. But for the most part, these loan documents are just, very standard documents that just need to be signed anyway. So I do prepare a lot of these buyers. Like, if you want the house, you're going to have to sign anyway. So let's just move forward and start signing.
Right.
But usually, I feel like lately, most lenders do send the buyers a copy of their closing documents. Even if it's not e-signed, like buyers usually come to the table with a little bit more of an idea of what they're about to sign. But typically, it's just a lot of CYA docs to protect the lender from any lawsuits. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And much of what is paid out at, it's not though the buyer is going to be writing 10 different checks because of all these different payouts that are due. Right.
Exactly,
That's
exactly. So that's our job, right? To make sure that everyone gets paid properly, that the taxes are paid. So you start off with a clean slate, no liens from taxes being unpaid. We pay the seller's mortgage off. If there was a mortgage left, we pay the realtors, we pay the survey company, we pay everyone essentially. So
yes.
the buyer brings one check and we pay everyone.
So with payment, much of that payment is coming out because a mortgage was obtained. All right. So for cash transactions, let's put that aside because there's no finance contingency, mortgage contingency at all. So jumping back to you, Alana, can explain to us what the mortgage contingency is all about and how the buyer is protected should there be issues on the financing side.
Yes. So the mortgage contingency is very, very important. And I also stress to agents, because I know agents also view your podcast, that being as truthful as possible in the mortgage contingency in the contract is really important. Obviously, especially to the attorney, and then as well with title, because there's a couple of crucial components in the mortgage contingency, and then in a moment we can talk about appraisal specifically because I like to spend time on that as well. So within the mortgage contingency, we want to know how much time did we guarantee the seller side that we will that we can have to get their mortgage in, right? So the general timeline, should we not give any time frame, is 30 days to get a mortgage commitment. Within that time frame, the buyer is submitting whatever financing requirements they have to their lender, and then the lender is guaranteeing that they will give a commitment or not. Now, if a commitment is not provided within 30 days, the seller will either have an option to terminate. We always require that if they do terminate, that means that the buyer receives their deposit, or we request an extension. Or it might be the case that the lender does not finance the loan and they provide a denial letter. Now, the other crucial component to the financing contingency aspect of the contract, though, is what type of financing they are using, right? Sometimes the options could be an FHA loan or a conventional loan or a 203k loan. Sometimes you'll see an item that says cash/hard money. And I tell clients, if you're using a hard money lender, you're not using cash. So there still might be a component there where you're working with a lender, and I would need to know that, because I would need to know what type of protections I need to keep in the contract in case the hard money lender doesn't come through, because you really don't have cash if you're relying on someone else to give you the money. If a buyer is using a conventional loan and then switches to a FHA loan, for example, I always let them know that that is a material element to the contract. So I would need to know that there are certain reasons why a seller may or may not want to use an FHA buyer. One of the main reasons being if they recently flipped the home and the timeline doesn't align with the FHA guidelines. So those are some crucial components to the financing contingency. And if would you like me to talk about the appraisal contingency specifically?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So the appraisal contingency is an add-on that we'll see a lot in section 42 of the contract, special provisions. And sometimes you'll see language where it might say buyer waives appraisal, or buyer waives appraisal with a gap of 20K or up to 10K, et cetera. What I
Right.
always explain to my clients is that you really can't waive the appraisal. An appraisal is a requirement from the lender. So every lender,
Going to happen.
yeah, every lender does an appraisal. What
Yes.
waiving appraisal means is that regardless of what an appraiser says that the house is valued at, you agree to proceed with the contract at the price that you guaranteed this,
Right.
which means you may have to come out of pocket. So I always ask them how much money they have in the bank. Right. I call the agent and I say, hey, did you do comps? Like, are we sure this is going to happen? And I'm about to drop some gems. Actually, should I say this on broadcast? No, we can talk about it. We can talk about it at your first time home buyers event though. So let's
Okay.
encourage everyone to
So
come.
be there. That's a quick plug.
Confirm. Let's
So Alana's giving a heads up. We do have an event coming up in late January. We'll be in touch with that. But yeah, go
Yes,
ahead.
yes. So make sure you come out to the first time home buyers event, and we can talk about how we can still protect you with waivers. But if there is an appraisal waiver, we always explain what that means to the buyer, right? And then I want to know who the lender is, because I also want to get on the phone with them and I want to see how fast they can do the appraisal, what that might mean in terms of denying the loan if they don't, if they don't have the funds. What waiving up to a cap means. So, hey, you said that you will waive up to $20,000, but you said you only have $5,000 in your account. So, do
Right.
you understand what the risk may mean? And that is a special provision that I see a lot, especially now with the market, where clients will waive.
Got it. Yeah. In this market, it has been very competitive. The rate increases has reduced the level of competition. But where we are right now, because we're recording right now in December, the market tends to slow down anyway. But still, with low inventory, buyer pool has shrank, but there's still some competition on those prime properties that are move-in ready. So you still find people coming over ask, and really trying to entice sellers by saying, "Hey, I will waive the contingency." Not waiving, like as Lalana said, that does not mean waiving the appraisal, because the lender does not care what you say about, an appraisal being waived or not in terms of them doing it. They are going to do it. So the appraisal will be performed. It's just a matter of, is there a large enough cash reserve in your bank account to cover any gap if there is a gap? Right. And that's why Alana's saying it's important to understand what the comps, what's going on in the marketplace. Does it appear as though it will appraise at that above ask value or close to it, so that the buyer is prepared? And I tell every client in that circumstance, be prepared for the worst. We're going to hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst case scenario. Right. So those are some important pieces, but the big picture of the finance contingency, as Alana was giving that outline, is that buyers are protected in the event where that financing does not pan out. They are not able to obtain mortgage. There's been cases where someone loses a job, and obviously, if you lose a job, lender is not going to approve, right? Because that income source now is no longer there. So there are absolutely protections, both in terms of the value of that home, if that does not check out on the appraisal, if there's no waiver, of course, but the value turns out to be $25,000 lower than what you offered. There is that option. And Alana, just speak to this really quickly too before we start to conclude here. If in the event there's no waiver,
Mm.
buyer didn't waive at all, offered 600,000 on a property because it was listed at 600,000, appraisal comes in at 575. So what are the options moving forward from there when it under appraised?
That's a great question. Myself and most attorneys will include a provision in our attorney review letter that states that if the property does not appraise, we reserve the right to renegotiate the contract price down to the appraised value, right? So, and then I explain, what the appraisal is. If the property does appraise, we don't have to let the seller know what the value is. All we have to do is let them know that it appraised. Sometimes what might happen is that the property appraises with what's called with conditions or subject to repairs, and we'll have to let them know, hey, the property appraised for value. However, the lender requires these repairs in order to pass. And sometimes they might ask for the actual report, and sometimes we'll just send them the sections that says what the repairs are. Now, if it appraises for less than the value, we are required to give them the report so that they know, for proof that that to show
Yes.
that it actually didn't.
Correct.
And then in most instances, depending on how low it appraised, and even actually, I just had one where the property under appraised by $60K, and
Wow.
the seller agreed to reduce the price, which
Okay.
I thought we weren't going to have a deal. So that was my praise God deal for the
Yeah. Really.
because they actually agreed. They actually agreed to reduce the price. Yeah. And then, and I think in that case they may have understood that the buyer over offered by a lot, so it
Got
makes
it.
sense to reduce.
Got it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. And so before we conclude this, one last point I wanted to bring up for Pam, because I have had buyers that not get too overexcited about in terms of the identity searches as well. So there's background on the names, and just give us a little bit of an insight on that, because buyers eventually they are a list of any kind of judgments or what have you that are presented and say, hey, we just need to understand, are you any of these people, right? So just give a little insight there on what buyers can expect with that kind of background on their name and identity.
Yeah, you're talking about the Patriot search, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we run a search, and I've had buyers contact me directly, like, you obviously know this isn't me. Why would you send it to me? It's just part of the process. So we pull any judgments. We do a search on to see if there is any judgments on the names. Any names that are similar will come up too. All the buyer really has to do is look through them, and then we cross-reference their social, and we say that it's not them. So a lot of times when you have a common name, that stack is going to be hundreds of pages.
Yeah.
Pamela Lee will probably come back with a good amount,
Right.
or Corey Jones, right?
Yes. Yes. Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's just part of the process. We have to just make sure that your name is clear, just like we're making sure that the property and the seller's names are clear.
Got it. Yeah. And again, that doesn't cause a lot of excitement, but it startles some initially, like what? Like, no, it's just
And it's like
verifying that none of you, right?
Exactly. And then you would sign
Right.
what they call an affidavit of title, which clears your name, make sure that your name is clear, the seller's the title is clear.
Got it. Got it. All right. So ladies, thanks again for joining. I want each of you just to let our audience know really quick what's the best way to contact you or somehow connect with you for your services. I'll start with you, Alana.
Yes, you can find me on all social media platforms at Miles Law LLC, and my website is mileslawllc.com, and you can get all of my contact information there.
Okay, fantastic. What about you, Pam?
You could find me on Instagram at Pam the Title Agent. No underscores, just Pam the Title Agent.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so I want to again thank you all for offering this time. You're busy. I know you have things going on every day. Very much appreciate those insights. We have an event, as Alana mentioned, for those who are in the general Union County, even Essex County. Little bit of Middlesex as well, probably for where we're going to be, because we're going to be in Plainfield, New Jersey next month. So you'll see some more of this on social media, but just take tabs if you're listening right now. We do have an event coming up pretty soon. It's going to be on a Saturday at Queen City Roasters in Plainfield. So thanks, ladies. We will see each other very soon. I want to wish everyone Happy New Year, of course, and stay safe and stay tuned to New Jersey Living, the podcast.
Corey.
Yes, thanks, Corey. Bye.
Bye.